The unexpected invitation. The mechanic's hands were covered in oil, his shirt torn at the sleeves and his face marked with grease. He was working on an old cargo ship in the dusty hangar. His life was simple: fix what was broken, get paid enough to eat, and sleep in the corner of the workshop that night. The air outside carried the sound of approaching engines. Sleek silver ships descended, nothing like the broken freighters he usually repaired. The ships carried the royal crest, a symbol he had only seen on hollows. The mechanic frowned. He had no reason to meet royals. He had no ties to power. He was just a worker. Yet the ships landed, and armored guards stepped out. Their faces were stern. Their boots struck the floor with perfect rhythm. "Human mechanic," one guard called. They were summoned by royal command. The mechanic wiped his hands nervously. "Me? You must be mistaken." But the guard grabbed his arm firmly. "There is no mistake." Before he could resist, he was escorted into the shining shuttle. The interior was filled with velvet seats, golden lights, and music that felt too soft for his rough ears. He sat stiffly, surrounded by soldiers. His heart pounded. What crime had he committed? The shuttle rose into the sky. The mechanic looked out the window and saw the planet lights fading. His workshop, his comfort, his old life all left behind ahead of him. The royal palace stood like a mountain of crystal. Glowing under the stars, the doors opened to reveal towering halls, each wall carved with silver and emerald. Nobles in jeweled robes walked past, whispering behind their hands. Their eyes fell on the mechanic's dirty clothes, his calloused hands, and they sneered. "Why is a human here?" One whispered. "A commoner? At the palace?" Another said. The mechanic lowered his gaze. He felt out of place, a man of grease and tools in a world of gold and silk. At last he was led into a massive chamber. A banquet table stretched across the room. Shining plates and glowing cups lined with rare fruits and meats. Candles flickered in the air, floating with silent grace. At the far end of the table sat the alien princess, her eyes bright as twin suns. Fixed on him with curiosity, she was young, elegant, and wore a crown of silver leaves. Around her sat advisors, generals and nobles. The mechanic froze. His breath caught in his throat. He had never seen beauty like this, not even in dreams. The guards pushed him forward until he stood before the princess. She tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into a small smile. "You are late," she said softly. The mechanic stammered. I think you have the wrong person." Gasps filled the room. The nobles exchanged shocked glances. Some laughed quietly, others frowned with disgust. The princess ignored them. She gestured to the empty chair beside her. "Sit," he obeyed, though his hands trembled. He felt the weight of every gaze upon him, every noble waiting for him to make a mistake. The food was placed before him, delicacies from across the galaxy. He had eaten only stale bread that morning. But now golden fruit and roasted meat filled the air with rich fragrance. The princess leaned closer, her voice low. "Do not be afraid. I wanted you here," his heart skipped, but why? "I am nobody." Her eyes narrowed with mystery. "Sometimes the galaxy needs nobodies. They are harder to control, harder to predict." The mechanic swallowed hard. He was trapped, not by chains, but by the weight of her gaze. One noble slammed his cup down. "Princess, this is madness." "A human mechanic? He is not fit to sit at this table." The princess's expression hardened. She looked at the noble, her voice sharp. "Silence. He is my guest." The chamber fell quiet. The mechanic felt the tension. A fragile line stretched between him and the entire royal court. The night stretched on, filled with whispers. The mechanic barely touched his food. Every sound, every stare pressed on him. Finally, the princess spoke again, her tone serious. "You wonder why you are here?" He nodded slowly. "You were chosen," she said. "Tonight is not a simple meal. This is a royal date, one that could change the future of the throne." The mechanic's chest tightened. The words echoed in his mind. Royal date. He looked around. Seeing only enemies in the eyes of the nobles, the princess smiled faintly. "Eat well, human mechanic. From this moment, your life will never be the same." The candles flickered. The room seemed colder, and in that instant, the mechanic realized he had stepped into a world where one wrong move could end him. But somewhere deep inside, a spark lit. A feeling that this night, strange and dangerous, was only the beginning of something much greater. Whispers of the court. The palace did not sleep that night. Servants moved silently through the halls, carrying trays of silver and crystal. Guards in polished armor stood at every gate. Their eyes sharp, their hands always on their blades. But louder than footsteps and clinking plates were the whispers. Whispers about the human, the mechanic, once invisible among grease and engines, was now the most talked about figure in the palace. Nobles gathered in corners, their jeweled cloaks brushing against marble floors as they leaned in close. A mistake, one hissed. The princess humiliates us all by bringing him. Not a mistake, another replied. It is a strategy. The girl plays games, perhaps with us, perhaps with the throne itself. They spoke as if the mechanic could not hear. But he did. Their voices followed him everywhere. Like shadows stretching across the walls, he tried to keep his head low. He told himself he was only passing through this nightmare, that he would wake up in the morning, back in the dusty hangar, back with broken ships and broken pay. But when he saw the princess again, he knew escape was impossible. She stood in the center of the royal balcony, her cloak of silver scales catching the morning sun. Nobles, generals, and diplomats surrounded her. Each one stared at him as if he were an insult carved into the very stone of the palace. The princess raised her voice. Clear and strong, this man is my chosen guest. You will treat him with respect. The mechanic felt his stomach twist. He wanted to protest, to shout that he did not belong here. But her eyes held him in place, steady and sharp. She was not defending him for kindness alone. She was daring the court to oppose her, and they did. A tall alien noble, his horns curved like blades, stepped forward. His voice rumbled like thunder. Princess, with all respect, your games must end. The throne requires strength, tradition, and honor, not— His eyes slid to the mechanic with disgust. Not a fragile human with dirty hands, the court murmured. Half in agreement, half in shock at his boldness. The princess's lips curved into a faint smile. Sharp and dangerous, you speak of strength, she said calmly. But strength is not always born of muscle and bloodlines. Sometimes it is found in places you refuse to look. The noble's face darkened. His hand gripped the hilt of his ceremonial blade. The tension in the hall grew thick. The mechanic's chest pounded. He had no sword, no armor, no allies. He was caught in a storm he never asked for.
He wanted to shout at them all, I am just a mechanic.
Leave me out of your throne games. But the words never left his mouth. Instead, he noticed something the others ignored. The great pillars of the balcony were humming, a sound so faint only his mechanic's ears could catch it. The crystals embedded in the stone trembled, their glow flickering strangely. Sabotage. The mechanic's eyes widened. He had worked with enough machines to know when one was about to fail. The entire balcony was unstable, ready to collapse under the weight of nobles and royals. He moved before fear could stop him. Rushing forward, he grabbed the princess's arm, pulling her back just as the first crystal cracked. A second later, the floor split open, shards of silver stone crashing down into the gardens below. Nobles screamed, guards stumbled, chaos erupted. The princess, safe in his grip, stared at him with wide eyes. Her breath caught in her throat. You saw it? The mechanic nodded quickly. It was rigged. Someone wanted you dead. Guards swarmed, rushing to secure the balcony. Nobles shouted accusations. Some demanded the mechanic's arrest. Others swore he must be part of the plot. The princess raised her hand, her voice cutting through the storm. Enough! If not for him, I would be lying broken in the gardens. Do you still doubt his worth? The hall fell silent. No one dared answer. The mechanic's heart raced. He had saved her life, but he had also painted a target on his own back. Whoever wanted the princess gone now wanted him gone too. Later that night, as he sat alone in the guest chambers, he heard voices again, this time softer, darker. They seeped through the cracks in the walls like poison. He must be removed, one whispered. The human ruins everything. Not yet, another voice said coldly. Let him stay, his presence weakens her. When the time comes, they will fall together. The mechanic clenched his fists. He had no weapon, no allies, no plan, yet deep inside, something stirred for the first time in his life. He realized he was more than a repairman of broken ships. He had been thrown into the game of crowns, and whether he wanted it or not, he was now part of it. Outside, the stars burned quietly, unaware that in the halls of a single palace, a simple mechanic had just become the spark that could change the fate of a galaxy. The night of tests. The palace had been shaken by the balcony collapse, but by evening the nobles had already twisted the story. Some said the human mechanic caused the danger. Others claimed he staged the rescue to gain favor. Whispers flowed like poison, turning truth into smoke. The mechanic walked through the marble halls with guards at his back. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some burned with hatred, others with curiosity, but none with trust that night. A grand feast was announced in the Hall of Stars. The ceiling shone like the open sky, constellations glittering across crystal panels. Long tables bent under the weight of food and gold. Nobles wore robes heavy with jewels. Their laughter was sharp, hiding their hunger for power. The princess entered with the mechanic at her side. The room fell silent. Every noble's gaze locked on the pair. Then the tests began. First came the test of wit. A counselor with silver tattoos leaned forward, his voice dripping with scorn. "Human, tell us, how does one such as you sit beside a throne? You have no titles, no bloodline, no claim." The mechanic's throat tightened, but he remembered the princess's words. Sometimes strength is found in places they refuse to look. He raised his chin. "I have no throne, no crown, no riches, but I know how to keep ships flying when engines fail. I know how to fix what others abandon as useless. Maybe that is why I am here, because even your empire has cracks that need repair." Gasps filled the hall. Some laughed mockingly, but others frowned, his words striking deeper than they wanted to admit. Next came the test of strength. A towering noble, his skin plated like armor, slammed a goblet down. "If the princess values this human, then let him prove he is more than words. Let him stand against me." The mechanic's stomach dropped. He had never fought a trained warrior in his life, but the challenge could not be refused. Guards cleared space in the hall. Nobles gathered eagerly. Their eyes hungry for blood, the noble lunged, swinging a blade that glowed with red light. The mechanic barely dodged, rolling across the polished floor. His lungs burned, his heart thundered. He was no fighter, but he was clever. As the noble charged again, the mechanic grabbed a broken piece of crystal ornament from the floor. Sparks flew as the blade struck stone. The mechanic twisted, forcing the shard into a joint in the noble's armor. The warrior staggered, his blade clattering to the ground. The hall erupted in shock. The human had not won by strength but by understanding weakness. The princess's eyes gleamed with pride, but behind her pride was something else. Fear. She saw how the court now looked at the mechanic not as a joke, but as a threat. The final test came not from the nobles, but from the shadows. As the feast ended, the lights dimmed. Musicians played soft songs, guests laughed and drank. But in the corner, a figure moved silently, his hand slipping to a hidden weapon. The mechanic saw it, an assassin cloaked in black. Moving towards the princess, his body acted before his mind could stop him. He leapt across the table, knocking plates and goblets aside. The assassin's blade sliced the air where the princess's neck had been a heartbeat earlier. Chaos exploded. Guards clashed with the killer. Blood spilled across golden floors in the confusion. The assassin whispered words only the mechanic heard. "She is marked for death, and now, so are you." The guards cut him down, but the message burned in the mechanic's mind. The princess touched his arm, her voice trembling yet steady. "You saved me again, but this will not end. Whoever sent him will not stop. Not until one of us lies cold." The mechanic looked at her. At the hall filled with nobles whispering like snakes. At the shadows where enemies hid. He had been a man of engines and tools, but tonight he understood. He was caught in a war not of machines, but of hearts, crowns, and knives in the dark. As the stars above the hall glittered, the mechanic felt a storm rising. The princess was no longer just a mystery. She was a target, and through her so was he. And in the silent corners of the palace, where whispers turned into plans, enemies sharpened their blades, preparing for the next move in a deadly game. The mechanic did not yet know how he would survive. But one thing was certain. He would never again be just a man with dirty hands. The royal betrayal, the palace was quiet after the feast. But it was not peace. It was the silence of knives hidden under cloaks, the calm before storms. The mechanic sat alone in his chamber, staring at his hands. They still shook from the assassin's blade that had nearly ended the princess's life. He was not a warrior, yet twice now he had saved her. But each time he stepped forward, the shadow against him grew darker, beyond the chamber walls. The nobles gathered in secret halls. Their whispers had grown sharp and bold. "He weakens the court," one hissed. "The princess risks the throne for a human," another growled. "He is not just weakness," a third whispered coldly. "He is danger, a spark that could burn us all." That night, the storm broke. The mechanic was summoned again, but this time not to a feast. He was led into the Hall of Verdicts, a towering chamber carved from black stone. Torches burned blue, and the air was heavy with judgment. Nobles filled the seats above like vultures waiting for death. At the center stood the princess, her chin lifted high, and beside her, the Queen Mother herself, an older figure cloaked in shadows, her silver crown gleaming under the torchlight. The Queen Mother's voice cut like steel. "Human mechanic, you have entered this palace as nothing. And yet now you stand as if you belong to it. You saved my daughter, yes. But some believe you are part of the plots against her. Tonight we will decide your place. Guest, traitor, or something else." The mechanic's chest tightened. His words failed him, all eyes stared down. Ready to tear him apart, the princess spoke quickly. "Mother, the mechanic is no traitor. He has risked his life for me. The attacks are not his doing. They are proof of enemies among our own nobles." Murmurs rose. Some agreed, others snarled, then came the betrayal from the shadows. The noble with blade-shaped horns stepped forward, his voice boomed. "Lies. We have proof." The human was seen speaking with servants before the collapse of the balcony. He knew where to stand, how to act, too perfect. "Too convenient," gasps shook the hall. The nobles roared with anger. Guards shifted uneasily. Even the princess looked startled. The mechanic shouted, "That's not true. I fixed ships, not palaces. I saw the crystals trembling, that's all." But his voice was drowned by the crowd. The horned noble smiled thinly. "See? He cannot deny his clever tricks. He hides his true role." The Queen Mother raised her hand. Silencing the chamber, her eyes were unreadable. But when she looked at the mechanic, he saw both suspicion and something deeper. Fear. Before judgment could fall, the torches flickered. A strange sound echoed through the hall. Like whispers carried on the wind, the Queen Mother stiffened, then spoke words that froze every heart. "The prophecy," she whispered. "The stars have spoken again." Silence swept the hall. Every noble leaned forward, afraid to breathe. The Queen Mother's voice shook. "3 hearts will decide the throne. If they unite, the crown survives the stars. If they break, the empire falls into dust." Her eyes turned to the princess, then to the mechanic, and finally, toward the hidden door of the chamber, where a figure stepped forward. Cloaked in blue silk, gasps erupted. It was the princess's sister, long hidden from the court, believed too sick to rule. The prophecy was alive before them, the princess, her sister, and the human mechanic. 3 hearts tied to one throne. The hall erupted into chaos. Some nobles screamed betrayal. Others shouted destiny. Guards drew weapons. Lines were drawn in blood before a single blade struck. The horned noble bared his teeth. "Blasphemy! A prophecy twisted by fools. The empire cannot bow to a mechanic." The princess stood tall, fire burning in her voice. Better a mechanic with courage than nobles with poison in their veins. Steel rang against steel as nobles loyal to the sisters clashed with those who sided against them. The Hall of Verdicts became a battlefield, torches crashing, screams echoing. The mechanic grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, his hands clumsy but desperate. He was no soldier, yet he fought. Not for glory, but to survive every swing. Every strike was a reminder. He should not be here. Yet here he was, standing beside royalty in the center of a war. As blades clashed around her, the Queen Mother raised her voice once more. "The prophecy cannot be stopped. 3 hearts, 1 throne, this is the will of the stars." But as she spoke, a dagger flew from the shadows. Striking her in the chest, the Queen Mother gasped, her crown falling to the stone floor. The hall fell silent in shock. The mechanic rushed forward, catching the Queen Mother as she fell. Her hand gripped his arm weakly, her eyes fierce even in her final breath. "Protect them. Protect the throne. The galaxy is watching." And with those words, the Queen Mother was gone. The mechanic looked up, the crown at his feet, blood on his hands, and chaos around him. The whispers of betrayal had turned into open war, and he now stood in the center of it, bound to destiny by prophecy, blood, and choice. 3 hearts, 1 throne. The Hall of Verdicts was drowning in chaos. Blades clashed, nobles screamed, guards fought against their own. Blood spilled across the black stone floor where the Queen Mother's crown still lay. Gleaming like a fallen star, the mechanic knelt beside her lifeless body, his hands shaking. Her final words echoed in his mind. "Protect them. Protect the throne, the galaxy is watching." He looked up and saw the princess fighting desperately with a jeweled dagger. Her sister, weak but fierce, tried to shield her with trembling hands. Around them, enemies closed in like wolves. The mechanic's chest tightened. He had been pulled here by mistake, dragged from a hangar of broken ships into a palace of broken trust. Yet now he understood there was no mistake. The prophecy had chosen him. He rose to his feet, blood on his shirt, determination burning in his eyes. He grabbed a fallen guard's spear, its weight heavy, its tip glowing faintly blue. The horned noble roared above the chaos, his voice thundering across the chamber. End this farce. Kill the princess, kill the human, and the throne is ours. The mechanic stepped forward, standing between the sisters and the noble. His voice shook but carried across the hall. If you want the throne, you'll have to step over me. Laughter erupted. Cruel and sharp, nobles mocked him, some jeered, but others paused. For the third time, the human had placed himself in the path of blades. The horned noble lunged, his blade flashing red under torchlight. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying. The mechanic stumbled under the weight of the noble's strength, but he refused to fall. Every swing reminded him of broken engines, of how small parts mattered, of how weakness could be turned into strength. At the last moment he twisted, driving the glowing spear into the noble's armor joint, the same weakness he had noticed before. The noble howled, collapsing to his knees. The hall froze in shock. Once again the mechanic had done the impossible. The princess shouted, her voice like thunder. Enough! The prophecy is before you. 3 hearts stand together, me, my sister, and this human you all despise. You can kill us, but if you do, the throne dies with us. And so does the empire. The nobles wavered. Their blades lowering, their eyes shifted, torn between fear and belief. But the horned noble, bleeding yet furious, hissed, prophecy is lies. The galaxy bows only to power. With a final desperate cry, he raised his blade for a killing strike. The mechanic moved faster, driven by instinct, rage, and the Queen Mother's dying words. He struck the noble down. The blade clattered from his enemy's hand, and silence filled the hall. All eyes turned to the center, where the human stood, panting, blood-stained, weapon in hand. The princess and her sister behind him. The crown lay at his feet untouched, waiting. The princess stepped forward, her voice steady. The throne does not belong to bloodlines alone. It belongs to those who fight for it, to those who protect it, and tonight it belongs to 3 hearts. United, she lifted the crown and placed it between herself. Her sister and the mechanic together, they raised it. Their hands meeting above the blood-soaked floor. The hall trembled, the torches blazed brighter, and in the silence that followed, the nobles bowed one by one, some in fear, some in respect, and some in awe. The mechanic stared at the crown, his reflection shimmering in its golden curve. He had never wanted power, never dreamed of palaces or stars. Yet now he was bound to them, tied by destiny, prophecy, and choice. Outside the palace, the galaxy stirred. Rumors would spread like fire, that a human mechanic stood at the heart of an empire. That prophecy had chosen him to guard the throne, that the future of countless worlds now depended on 3 hearts bound together. But inside the hall, the mechanic felt only the weight of what was to come. He looked at the princess, whose eyes held both fire and sorrow, and at her sister, fragile yet strong, and he knew this was only the beginning. The throne had been secured tonight, but the galaxy was vast, and enemies beyond the palace walls would soon rise. Still, he whispered to himself with quiet defiance, I was a mechanic. I fixed what was broken, and now I'll fix this too. The crown gleamed under the starlight streaming through the broken roof. 3 hands held it high, and the galaxy whispered in awe. 3 hearts, 1 throne, infinite stars. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but the true war had only just begun.